quick pop quiz. How much money do you think the average American homeowner spends on, like, maintenance and repairs over the lifetime of owning their house?
Oh, this is the ultimate trick question.
It really is. So keep a number in your head right now. Lock it in.
Because whatever number you just came up with, it's almost certainly wrong.
Yeah, no, mine definitely was. I mean, before we started digging into the sources today, if you had pressed me, I would have thrown out a number that felt, you know, substantial, but maybe manageable.
Right, something realistic.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. I probably would have guessed somewhere right around $100,000 for, say, 30 years of living in a place.
Yeah, 100 grand.
Right. That feels like a solid estimate.
Yeah.
I mean, if you would patch the roof a few times, swap out a dying water heater, maybe paint the exterior once or twice.
Sure.
It adds up, obviously. But 100 grand felt like the absolute ceiling to me.
Well, you were actually guessing significantly higher than most people do.
Wait, really?
Yeah. When we look at the core sources for our deep dive today, so we've got the 2026 Synchrony Lifetime of Home Care study, alongside some really brilliant industry analysis from HVACR Business and an episode of Hartzell's Cool Talk.
Okay.
And through those, we actually get to see the survey data on this. Synchrony literally asked homeowners across the country that exact question.
And what did they say?
The average guess was about $70,000.
70 grand. See, honestly, that sounds like a problem you can handle.
Right.
Like, it sounds like something you can comfortably just chip away at over a few decades.
It is a very comforting number, but it is also a complete fundamental misunderstanding of reality.
Yeah. Comforting, but entirely wrong.
Exactly. What the analysts at Cool Talk and HVACR Business point out is that this specific misunderstanding, they call it the $70,000 myth, is the root cause of widespread financial anxiety for almost every homeowner in the country.
Which makes sense.
Right, because the gap between what we expect to happen and what mathematically will happen is, well, it's where the panic lives.
Wait, I need to stop you there and push back on this a second, because I'm looking at the actual data from the Synchrony study right now.
Oh, prepare yourself.
Seriously. The real number they have for lifetime home maintenance is a staggering $339,000.
Yep.
That cannot be right. Almost 340 grand.
It's mind-blowing.
That is basically buying a second house just to keep the first one standing. Like, how are they possibly getting that math?
I know. Just let that number hang in the air for a second, because it really is the reality for the modern homeowner. $339,000.
Wow.
But when you break that total down, and spread it across the year, you actually own the home, you are looking at roughly $11,000 a year.
$11,000.
Every single year.
Okay, but $11,000 a year. I'm looking around my house right now, and I definitely do not spend 11 grand a year on it.
Right. It doesn't feel like that.
No. Like, couple of trips to the hardware store, sure, but not 11 grand.
Well, you don't spend it evenly. That is the illusion of homeownership.
Oh, I see.
You might spend like $500 one year, and then the next year you need a $20,000 roof.
Right. Ouch.
Yeah. And a few years later, your foundation needs grading, or your entire plumbing stack has to be replaced.
The big stuff.
Exactly. We are talking about repairing and replacing major systems. So the HVAC, the water heater, major appliances, the exterior siding.
Right.
When you annualize those massive, unpredictable shocks over 30 years, it averages out to $11,000 a year.
And if I'm listening to this in my car right now, I might literally be having a minor panic attack. Because who just has an extra 11 grand lying around every 12 months?
Well, that brings us to the statistic from the study that really sets off the alarm bells.
Okay, hit me.
7 out of 10 homeowners, so that's 70% of the people living in these houses, have absolutely no dedicated reserve fund for these expenses.
None.
$0 set aside for things that are, statistically speaking, guaranteed to break.
Oh, man. They are flying completely blind.
What's fascinating here is this concept of the expectation gap.
Okay, explain that.
So when we see that 70% of people have no savings for home repairs, it is incredibly easy to just blame, widespread financial irresponsibility. Like, people just aren't saving.
Right. That's the gut reaction.
But the experts analyzing this data argue it's actually a data failure.
A data failure?
Yeah. Think about it logically. If you genuinely, deeply believe that a lifetime of home repairs is only going to cost you $70,000, you are not going to budget for the real number.
Oh, Yeah, you're budgeting for a fantasy.
Exactly. You think you were doing a great job because you saved a few $1,000s.
Right. You're patting yourself on the back like, hey, I've got $3,000 in the bank. I'm good.
Right. So when the real number inevitably shows up, like when you get handed a quote for an $8,000 exterior paint job or a massive system replacement, it feels like this unprecedented, catastrophic emergency.
Because you didn't see it coming.
Exactly. But it wasn't an emergency. It was a statistical certainty.
Oh, that is so well put. It's like driving a car without a working shield gauge on the dashboard.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Right. You are cruising down the highway, the radio is playing, the AC is blowing cold, everything feels totally fine.
Smooth sailing.
And then suddenly the engine sputters, and the car completely dies on the side of the road. And you can't scream at the engine because it abruptly stopped.
No, of course not.
It was always going to run out of gas. That is literally how combustion works. You just didn't have the dashboard to see the tank emptying.
Right. The gas tank was emptying the entire time. You just lacked the instrumentation to track it.
Wow.
And in homeownership, because we lack that instrumentation, these highly predictable milestones completely disguise themselves as sudden emergencies.
Okay, but $11,000 a year still sounds, I don't know, a bit abstract to me.
Sure.
If the whole point is avoiding that sudden breakdown on the side of the highway, how do I actually build the dashboard? Like, what does this look like in practice?
Well, let's break it down.
Yeah, which system in my house is eating the biggest chunk of that money?
To prove that these so-called emergencies are actually predictable, the data zooms in on one of the most expensive, dreaded, and misunderstood systems in the entire house.
Oh, yes.
The heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, the HVAC.
Oh, yeah. The dread is real with that one.
It is the perfect case study because it is the system industry professionals see causing the absolute most panic. The data from Cool Talk actually breaks down the typical 30-year life cycle of a home's HVAC situation.
Okay, let's walk through that, because I think everyone listening has had a moment of pure terror staring at their thermostat.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has.
So let's say you buy a house, and the HVAC system is fairly new, maybe just 5 years old. According to the timeline in our sources, you are entering the honeymoon phase, right? Years 0 to 10.
Exactly. The honeymoon phase is generally pretty quiet, which unfortunately lulls you into a false sense of security. Your costs are low here. You are looking at annual maintenance, which averages around $460 a year.
Okay, manageable.
Yeah, that usually covers 2 standard tune-ups, say $229 each for a heat pump. Or if you are proactive, you might get a bundled maintenance plan.
Which costs what?
Those range from $138 for something basic up to maybe $360 for comprehensive coverage.
Okay, a few $100 a year.
Yeah.
If that is all home ownership was, the $70,000 guess would be spot on.
Right. But then
We hit the warning shots. Years 10 to 15.
yeah, the honeymoon is officially over.
This is where the unschedulable midlife repairs start creeping in, right?
Exactly. The system has been running hard for a decade. Parts begin to degrade. This is when a blower motor might fail.
And what's that cost?
That is a sudden $800 to $1,200 hit.
Ouch.
Or you get a coil leak, which can set you back anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500.
Okay, I'm going to stop you again because these parts always sound like a foreign language to me.
Fair enough.
When you say blower motor or coil leak, what are we actually talking about? Why does it cost $2,000 to fix a leak?
Well, think of the blower motor as the lungs of your house. It is the massive fan that physically pushes the conditioned air through your ductwork and out of your vents.
Okay, lungs. Got it.
It runs constantly, and eventually the bearings wear out or the electrical components just fry.
Makes sense. And the coil?
A coil leak is even worse. The coil is a network of tubes carrying the refrigerant, so the actual chemical that absorbs heat from your house.
Right, the stuff that makes it cold.
Yes. And it is constantly expanding and contracting, exposed to condensation and pressure. Over time, the metal pits and cracks and the refrigerant escapes.
So you just patch it, right?
No, that's the thing. You can't just slap tape on it. You have to replace the entire coil network and recharge the whole chemical system.
Oh, wow.
And that chemical is highly regulated and very, very expensive.
And if you are in that 70% of homeowners with absolutely no reserve fund, taking a $2,500 hit for a coil leak feels like the end of the world.
Absolutely.
But the sources say it is just the preamble.
Right. It gets worse.
Because somewhere between year 15 and 20, the big event happens. the system is completely tapped out. You are looking at a full system replacement costing between $15,000 and $30,000.
$15,000 to $30,000.
Just brutal.
For a household that, as the Synchrony study explicitly points out, has $0 saved for this exact moment.
Okay, I have to confess something here, and I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to this.
Let's hear it.
When my last AC unit died, it didn't just quietly pass away in its sleep.
They rarely do.
It hummed aggressively for 2 years. The utility bills were creeping up month after month. The unit was running for hours just to drop the temperature a single degree.
Warning shots.
Right, but I completely ignored it. I literally turned up the volume on my TV so I wouldn't hear the hum through the wall.
Oh, wow.
Why do we do that? Why is the default human setting to just ignore the giant metal box screaming for help until it finally dies on a 104-degree day in August?
You know, it is a really profound question about human psychology.
Because it's not logical at all.
No. Homeowners ignore those glaring signs because they do not have an expert translating those mechanical noises into a specific financial timeline.
A financial timeline.
Think about it. To you, a humming noise is just an annoyance, right? It is a mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
But if an expert stands next to you and says, that specific humming noise means your compressor is failing and you have exactly 24 months before you need $15,000, suddenly the noise has a price tag.
And a deadline.
Yes. Without a timeline, denial is simply the easiest coping mechanism.
So we just cross our fingers and hope the problem fixes itself, which, spoiler alert, it never does.
Never.
And then we are stuck sweating in our living room, forced to make a $15,000 financial decision in 24 hours using, like, high-interest credit cards.
Which is exactly what you want to avoid. So this raises an important question. How do we force ourselves to build that timeline?
Right. How do we get the data we need to stop relying on denial?
Exactly.
Well, the sources all point to a very specific yet chronically misunderstood tool to fix this: the regular maintenance plan.
Yes.
And I have to be honest, when I hear maintenance plan, I just think of a guy showing up in a van, changing a $20 air filter, spraying down some coils with a hose, and charging me a few $100 for the privilege.
That is exactly what everyone thinks.
Right. I just never saw the value in it.
That is the common perception, but it is deeply, deeply flawed. A well-structured maintenance plan does 3 very distinct things to protect you from that $339,000 gut punch we talked about.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, it stops the domino effects.
Meaning like one tiny failing part that takes down the whole ship?
Precisely.
How does that actually happen inside the machine?
Well, an HVAC system is a tightly interconnected network. So let's talk about the capacitor, for example.
Okay.
A capacitor is essentially a powerful battery that stores energy. When your thermostat calls for cooling, the compressor, which is the massive heart of the entire system, needs a massive jolt of electricity to start up.
More than a normal plug.
Way more than your house wiring can provide instantly. The capacitor delivers that jolt.
Okay, so it jump-starts the heart.
Exactly. But capacitors degrade over time. If a technician is doing routine checks, they can test the capacitor, see it is weak, and swap it out for like $90.
Which is nothing compared to a new system.
Right. But if you do not have a plan and nobody's looking at the system, that dying capacitor stops delivering the jolt.
And then what?
Now, the compressor has to strain and struggle to pull enough power to start itself. It overheats, it grinds. Eventually, the compressor completely burns out.
Oh, man.
So now, a $90 fix has turned into a $3,000 total system failure, or it necessitates a full replacement.
Wow. You just paid thousands of dollars because nobody was there to stop the first domino from falling.
Exactly.
Catching a $90 part before it murders a $3,000 part. I mean, that alone justifies the cost of the plan.
It really does. But the second thing the maintenance plan does is soften the blow when the big replacement inevitably happens.
Because it's going to happen eventually.
It will. But because you are on a plan, you are treated as a preferred customer. You get priority scheduling, so you aren't waiting 3 weeks in a heat wave. And you get significant discounts on parts and labor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and those discounts essentially offset the cost of the plan itself over the years.
But the experts at Cool Talk argue the third benefit is the absolute most important.
Oh, without a doubt.
And it's the one nobody puts on the brochure. Honest aging information.
Yes. There is a quote featured in the deep dive sources from Dave. He's an industry veteran who runs an HVAC business, and it encapsulates this perfectly.
What does he say?
He says, I do not want to be the guy who shows up in August and gives somebody a $15,000 bill they were not ready for. I want to be the guy who told them in March that this was coming.
Oh, that's so good. And here's where it gets really interesting, because I was trying to figure out how to visualize this relationship, and it is exactly like having a fantastic dentist.
Oh, I love that comparison.
Right, because if you only ever go to the dentist when your face is swollen and you are in agony, they are just going to look at you and say, you need a root canal right now, and start drilling.
And you're paying a fortune.
Exactly. But a good dentist, like someone you see for regular checkups, will look at a routine x-ray and say, hey, let's keep an eye on this back tooth. The enamel is wearing thin. We don't need to do anything today, but next year we are probably going to need to do a crown.
They give you the warning.
Yes, they give you 12 full months to mentally and financially budget for that crown instead of just waking up in agony.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what you were really highlighting is the true product being sold here. The true product of a maintenance plan isn't clean coils.
Right.
It isn't a fresh air filter. It is time.
You are buying time.
Precisely. You are buying the runway needed to turn a massive midnight surprise into a carefully planned, scheduled expense.
Which changes everything.
Dave's philosophy is that the maintenance plan exists entirely to give him a reason to be in your house twice a year, so he can be brutally honest with you about what your equipment is doing.
And that honest timeline is worth infinitely more than a 10% discount on labor.
100%.
Okay, so the maintenance plan gives us the timeline. We can finally see the fuel gauge.
Right.
The final piece of the puzzle is what we actually do with that time once we have it. We know the true costs. We have built the dashboard. Now we need the practical application.
How to pay for it.
Exactly. How do we painlessly build the funds so you don't end up in that 70% of homeowners who have nothing saved?
Well, the Synchrony study is interesting here because Synchrony is, at its core, a financing company.
Right. They do loans?
Yeah. Their data shows that consumer financing exists exactly to bridge this gap. Companies like Synchrony, Wells Fargo, and WiseTech offer quick loan solutions when you are in a pinch and the system dies in August.
Which is helpful if you're stuck.
It is. But the analysts all agree. While financing is a necessary tool when you have zero options, building your own reserve is the far superior, infinitely less stressful route.
And the math on building that reserve is shockingly accessible.
It really is.
The sources outline what we can call the $50 a month rule.
I love this rule.
Me too.
Yeah.
It goes like this. If you, as a homeowner, put away just $50 a month, specifically earmarked for your HVAC system, from the very day you buy the house, the math works absolute magic.
Let's hear the numbers.
At year 15, when that system is likely reaching the end of its life, you have $9,000 sitting in cash.
Wow.
And if the system stretches to year 20, you have $12,000.
And when you combine that $12,000 cash reserve with local utility rebates, which are often heavily incentivized for upgrading to high-efficiency systems, or even use partial financing for whatever small remainder is left, the replacement is completely covered.
It's totally painless. I love this $50 figure because it is so incredibly relatable.
It really puts it in perspective.
Think about your monthly budget. $50 a month is the exact cost of a standard streaming bundle.
Yep.
You've got Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, maybe a premium music subscription. Boom, $50.
Gone just like that.
Exactly. You could literally fund your home's most expensive, anxiety-inducing system just by reallocating your TV budget.
It's amazing.
It takes it from this insurmountable mountain of debt that keeps you up at night to just deciding you don't need to watch 3 different streaming services.
It frames the expense as a highly digestible, everyday choice.
Yes.
And to see how this plays out in the real world, the sources actually provide a fantastic case study from a customer in Okarche.
Oh, I read about this.
This perfectly illustrates the alternative to the panic buy.
Walk us through what happened in Okarche, because this really is the dream scenario.
Okay, so this customer had a system that was 16 years old.
Which is deep into that dangerous big event territory we discussed earlier.
Exactly. And it had been making that dreaded humming noise for 2 summers.
Uh-oh. The hum.
The hum. But instead of turning up the TV, they called Dave out in March, well before the brutal heat set in.
More.
Dave looked at the aging system, ran the diagnostics, and gave them the honest truth. He said, you have 1, maybe 2 summers left in this thing if you are incredibly lucky.
The timeline.
He gave them the timeline. But here is the key. Because they understood the concept behind the $50 a month rule, they had been putting away a small amount for years.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
They actually had the cash sitting there.
They had it ready, and because they had the cash on hand, they didn't wait for the system to die on a holiday weekend.
Right.
They proactively paid cash for a brand new high-efficiency unit right then in April. Because it was the shoulder season, they avoided the peak summer rush, they easily secured a $500 utility rebate, and they slept peacefully in a perfectly cool house all summer long.
That is incredible.
And Dave estimated that by planning it this way, they saved themselves roughly $3,000 compared to what they would have paid if they had waited for the system to die and had to finance whatever equipment was left over in a panic in August.
Wait, they saved $3,000 just by moving the purchase timeline up a few months and using their own money?
Yep.
That is wild.
It is the ultimate antithesis of the $339,000 gut punch.
True.
The Okarcha customer didn't avoid the expense, right? The equipment still had to be bought, thermodynamics demand it, but they completely avoided the panic.
The panic. I mean, that is the entire ball game right there. We are trying to remove the panic from homeownership.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's synthesize everything down to the absolute essentials.
Let's do it.
If you are listening right now, there are two critical numbers you must walk away with today to fix your dashboard.
Number one.
First, you need to mentally and financially plan for $11,000 a year for total home maintenance over the long haul. That is the real number for the roof, the plumbing, the siding, everything.
Yes.
Second, specifically for your HVAC system, you need to expect a major event. So either a massive unavoidable repair or a total system replacement every 10 to 15 years.
Those are your navigational beacons. And the core mantra derived from all of our sources today is beautifully simple.
What is it?
Plan it, do not panic it.
Plan it, do not panic it.
If you let those two numbers shape your monthly savings habits starting right now, you are already ahead of 70% of the country.
That's a huge advantage.
It is. You are moving from reacting to emergencies to managing a schedule.
Plan it, do not panic it. I love that. So what does this all mean?
Good question.
We started today talking about a broken fuel gauge, right? About driving without knowing when the car is going to stop. We've shown you how to fix the gauge for your house, how to stop ignoring the humming noises, and how to buy yourself the luxury of time.
Time is everything.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If our homes are constantly giving us a 2 to 3 year mechanical warning for a $15,000 expense,
Yeah.
what other major life expenses are currently humming loudly in the background of your life, just waiting for you to actually stop and listen to them?
Oh, that is the real question. Once you learn to hear the humming, you can never unhear it.
Listen to the hum, build your dashboard, and take your power back. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.